Scott.
Mark.
Welcome to episode 7, round 3.
I didn't know you were going to do that.
So, Bat Family, this is the third time we have tried to record this episode. The first time...
A tornado tried to kill us.
Yep, and you ended up staying here way too late.
I got 2 a.m.
The second time, Audacity, and what's funny is the last time we did this was the final piece of content that we recorded as far as our old audio setup, and it apparently knew that was going to be the case because it completely ruined your audio. Not mine. Don't know why. It just ruined it. So here we are again, episode 7.
The
How you doing?
trifecta. Doing good. So let's see. Since the last time we talked, I'm coming off of Skate Wars.
Yeah.
For those who don't realize, I am an announcer for South Bend Roller Derby and was scheduled for 11 games, which, because of poor management, went from 11 down to 8. So, thank God.
That is an intense amount of announcing.
It is an intense amount of announcing, and it was so good. I got to see some very talented athletes and cheer them on.
So, Scott, what has been on your table?
Well, on my table, it's been lots of Railroad Ink and Frosthaven. We finally got together and defeated one of the episodes that's just been kicking our high ends. So
Nice.
It was nice. We did a quick character swap out because of how Frosthaven differs from Gloomhaven. Because it's not, I have this character and you have that character. It's, we have this conglomeration of characters and we can switch as we see fit.
Nice.
So I set my character back for a little bit and then switched up and we plowed through the episode that was driving us nuts.
Nice.
Yeah, it felt very good.
Is that the one that you had skipped to go beat something else? You went back to that one?
Yeah, because we needed a morale booster. You can only fail an episode so many times where you're just like, okay, I'm either going to do something else or I'm going to burn this game. And so we went with, let's try a different one. It was good.
Good. Glad you made it through.
Yeah. What did you play?
So this episode, I have unintentionally, semi-intentionally built kind of a theme for my games. And this is apparently Space Week for me. This is supposed to be Expansion Week for the episode, but for me, it's also Space Week.
Yeah.
Who knows? So the first thing that I played, and I played a bunch of it, is this game called Deep Space D6. And it is a solo-only game from Town Leader Games. It's from 2018, and it's one of those solo dice rolling, dice placement games. It very much fits into the type of solo game that I don't like. Mm-hmm. In episode 8, our solo episode, we'll be talking more about that. But what I ended up finding with the game is that it is one of those that it takes a very long time. You are subject to whatever the luck of the dice says, and it's one of those games where it is going along fine, and then one bad turn and you're out the game. And the game does not end until you go through this entire deck of cards. And you will see 1, probably 2, if things are going badly, maybe 3 cards. Oh. And all it takes is 1 turn of rolls that don't go your way and you're shot. It's a great production. It's a neat idea, but the problem is it's too random. It's what I dislike about solo only games.
That little deck is 42 cards. You're only seeing 1 or 2, maybe 3 at a time. Oh, God, that's a long game.
And you're only seeing 3 if you're doing badly.
Oh.
Yeah.
So at least 22 rounds if you're doing okay?
Yeah.
Ugh, I'm sorry.
And it has this little expansion in it, which adds in some fine stuff, but you also have to switch out the deck, and it's another 42 card deck. Same rules, same problem. I want to say it's worth playing. It's not. I didn't like it. So the next game I want to talk about is an older Kickstarter from 2017. I found it relatively inexpensively, like $20, and I almost got rid of it before playing it. It is called Planetarium. It has one of the best looking box covers in board gaming. And it is in that transitional Kickstarter era where some more money was coming in and production levels were coming up, but it was still very independent, like a single guy doing it. And that's what happened with this one. So there's some production issues that I'm willing to overlook, like the board barely fits in the box, but the theme is really interesting because the board is just a bunch of concentric circles around a central star. And you are trying to develop 4 planets across the course of the game. game. And it's a little bit of a race because there is a very short stopping point of once enough tokens have been played to this track on the one side of the board, the game's going to end. So as you're developing the planets, you're trying to figure out, do I want to save up for the really big stuff, score a bunch of points at once, or do I want to try and rush the track and, make that work? Really, really cool game. Almost got rid of it because it's not a complicated rule book, but my brain just kept looking at it and like, I don't want to. I just don't want to read this. And that's normally a kiss of death for me in a game. Mm-hmm. And what ended up happening for some reason, I was like, you know what? I need to play it. I think it's super cool looking. I might like it. I'm just going to sit down with it and two-hand it because it says 2 to 4 players on the box. And then I finished reading the rule book and there's a solo mode in it. So it's actually a 1 to 4 player game and the solo mode works incredibly well.
That's awesome.
It has this really neat balance. The AI opponent starts with a very high score, and every time they take an action and they score points, it actually lowers their scoring threshold. So depending on that, how much do I want to push the track depends on how many points you're going to give them, because the goal is just exceed the solo bot score. But depending on how you've played and depending on what they're doing, it's this kind of running target. It's really cool. You managed to actually help me find the expansion for it, which, as pretty as this box cover is, that one is probably even prettier.
Yeah.
Which is crazy. The Primordial expansion, I'm very excited. Little modular expansion, help extend the length of the game in one side and then some other stuff in the other one. So I have yet to play with the expansion, but I'm very excited to do so. Meanwhile, the final game I've been playing a lot of is Beyond the Sun.
Oh, yeah, no.
Yeah. In the original recording of this, you were like, oh, I might be interested in that. And then I explained the game and you
showed me the back of the box.
You told me you wanted to burn the game just
on site. Yeah.
Because if you remember, it is Tech Tree, the board game. So on one half of the board, you are developing worker placement spaces and a lot of high asymmetry, a lot of resource management, mid-weight Euro stuff.
That part looks great.
And then the other half of the game is an area control game where you're trying to take and control planets and develop out. It has this really great kind of rush of you are developing and you're doing everything you need to do. The way the game end comes on you is pretty crazy. Really love this game. I'm always willing to play it on BGA. I'm always willing to table it. I may force you to play it for a Why Did I Play This eventually. This also has a really good expansion, Leaders of the New Dawn. Not a lot to it, but it's one of those, for as small as it is, it adds some really great stuff. Really like Beyond the Sun.
I'm glad you do.
This is expansion week. There's a reason we kept mentioning it in what's been on our table. Let's start here. Do you like expansion?
Oh, very much so. Oh, yeah. Typically, when I have a board game, if it's one of those games that I really, really enjoy, I want more. Mm-hmm. I don't know of very many games that are on my shelf right now or are in my car that I don't want more of. As long as it makes sense.
Sure.
But we'll get into those reasonings a little bit farther down on our list. But yes.
What, you don't want the catapult for Carcassonne? The tile laying game that has a dexterity expansion? Come on.
Yeah, as long as the expansion makes sense, yes.
I generally have found I want expansions, but I definitely am no longer a completionist collector for expansions the way I used to be. Thank you, Dominion, for that one, and Smash Up. I think we differ on that one.
I'm still very much a completionist, but that's because of the games that I have in my collection.
That's fair.
I love modularity. I like to be able to pick and play.
Sure.
More often than not, I want as much modularity as I can.
I generally agree with that. If there's a way to change the play experience, that's something I'm looking for. If it is something that is plug and play, that's something that I really enjoy, of let me choose the variety that I want in the game, but still keep it largely the same structure of a game.
Yeah.
So we have a few different categories we want to walk through, and let's just start at the top of our list. So number one, do you prefer an expansion to be just more stuff, or do you like ones that add a bunch of new mechanisms? And is it okay if it tries to do both things, or would you rather just be one or the other?
Personally, as long as it makes sense, I don't mind both. In fact, I kind of enjoy when it's both, because I enjoy learning, and learning means that I'm expanding the game in a sense. I don't mind new rules and new modes of play, because that means I'm learning more about the game that I really, really like. So when something comes in and it adds a new mode or that new rule, like if you look at, all the Ticket to Rides, every map brought something different to the exact same normal startup. I love that. Yeah. I thought that was great. And it all made sense. It wasn't like something that was added that, in my collection, the things that have had expansions, I've never gone, why?
Sure.
Why was this? And I think maybe that's just because of luck, in all honesty, because I know there are games where it's like, why the heck was this added? This doesn't make any sense. And that happens. But yeah, I want to be able to learn more and have more things thrown at me so that I can use them against my friends.
I have found largely I prefer them to just be more stuff at this point.
Oh, okay.
So I know this episode's going to probably appear slightly out of order chronologically because of the way we've had to re-record it, but the apiary expansion just came in. The apiary expansion is more stuff. That's it. I'm very excited about that. There's more starting boards. There's more cards. There's more tiles. Nothing new mechanically in there. It's not adding new sideboards. It's not adding anything like that. It is just more variety in the game that I like to play. And when I look at an expansion like that, it reminds me of what my favorite games are, of something that a core design is strong enough and there's enough flexibility from game to game to game that I don't feel like I need anything else, anything mechanically. Petrichor is one of those few examples that I actually really like being able to change and scale how kind of brain burny the game is. Base game is not that overwhelming. It's a little bit of area control, multi-use cards. There's some really neat stuff going on, but the game teaches and plays in 45 minutes. We can sit there and casually play and have fun with it.
Right.
If you put in cows and bees, it is a significantly different game where you're going to be sitting there and your brain is going to be burning. And so I really like that when a game, especially through expansions, does that. But again, core of Petrichor stays the same. There are two examples of new mechanisms that I actually think were done very badly. You have experienced one of them and you hated the game because of it. And that is Yak, the Birdwatch expansion.
Oh, yeah, that one was... Ooh.
And what's crazy is all that the Birdwatch expansion added was one card and a couple of bird meeples. But the way that one card changed the very cycle of the game, it basically killed the resource market and it dragged the game out significantly. And you had a very bad time with it.
Yeah, and it brought nothing else to the game.
And it's one of those, for as small as it was and as little as it added, it was that one extra mechanism that it just blew the game.
Right.
Then you have something like Atlantis Rising's Monstrosities expansion, which is one of the very few expansions I flat out regret buying, because Atlantis Rising 2nd Edition is one of those games that has a very tight window to get everything done in. And regardless of your player count, regardless of your difficulty, you have not a lot of time to achieve the success state. I like the fact it's modular, but sits there and says, okay, in that same time frame, do all this extra stuff. It's very frustrating. So that's one of those where it ended up pushing me away from the game.
I guess I've been very lucky when it comes to the ones that I've picked that have had the expansions, that it didn't add anything that really messed up the game. So knock on wood that never happens again.
Moving into the next one. Are there too many expansions? Are you okay if a game just says, hey, we're going to have 2 expansions and that's it, we're done, no more content? Or do you like when a game has, quote unquote, an endless flow of content?
Again, it has to make sense. I don't mind a whole bunch of expansions. Look at Final Girl. You've got tons and tons and tons of horror movies that we could pick that last person to be, and that technically could never end if they really, really wanted it to. But I mean, eventually it has to.
Yeah, even as somebody that owns everything for it, and I have all the season 3 stuff coming, I think that's probably going to be where I stop, because, 15 feature films, 16 because I have the Christmas one. There's so much interoperability there that I never have to get anything else.
Right. And I know, like, for me, Dice Throne, that game could have at least 1 or 2 more expansions, and I'll be like, okay, I'm good. Like, give me another Dice Throne Adventures expansion, and then another normal expansion, and then let's call it good. Really just kind of depends on the game. If you're looking at things with comic book heroes, as long as they've got all the comic book heroes, then, some of them it's like, okay, this is a little overkill. But then you get people that be like, but where's Red Hood? Or you didn't put Forge in with the X-Men, stuff like that.
When an expansion is good is when it makes me excited for a game again. And normally I'm going to hit a point in a experience where I look at it and say, like, okay, this is, for lack of a better term, complete. Parks is a great game. The Nightfall expansion finished the game, added the rest of it in. The Backstage expansion for Shakespeare finished the game, felt great.
Right.
When the wildlife expansion came out for parks, I looked at it, I'm like, do I really need this? Because it's different art and it's not all going to fit in the box the same way and all the little things. And that was one that I ended up picking it up and I ended up enjoying it. But if I didn't pick that one up, wouldn't bother me at all. When it comes to something like Five Tribes, the Artisans of Nakala, perfect, throw it in. I will always teach with it. It's great. I will never buy Winds of the Soul. Do not like that expansion. I don't think it provides anything positive to the game. And I'm fine with only having part of it. I don't need all of it.
Most people that are going to be in this hobby, you're going to do your research. So you're going to sit there and see, okay, this is a game that I really, really enjoy. This is a game that I'm going to really, really play. Oh, I see this as expansions. What are people's experiences with these expansions? Okay, the expansions are very favorable. Perfect. Yeah. I'll pick up this expansion. Even as long as I've been in the hobby, I still do my research.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, you kind of have to, because you don't dare want to spend your money and have it be a bomb.
Yeah, there are very few games where I'll be like, new expansion, bought. Apiary is one of them.
Oh, yeah.
We'll see if anything else comes out for it. I don't know if they will or not. I love Apiary. I'll play more of it. Root, auto back. Don't care. Give me more factions. The storage solution for it sucks anyway, so whatever. Just add another box into that pile. But there are other games, like one that I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit, Black Angel. I don't think it needs an expansion. It doesn't have one. It's been out for 5 years. It's never going to get one. And I think it's perfectly fine because that game feels done to me. The next one, we have been touching on it kind of on and off throughout this conversation so far. Do expansions bloat a game? Do you want to go back because of an expansion, or do they push you off? And my immediate example for this is Role Player, where Role Player on its own as a base game honestly really let me down, because you build a character and then nothing happens with it. It's just, meh, game's over. With the Minions and Monsters expansion, it gave you the reason to build your character. And I really enjoyed it. And I loved having that expansion there. I pulled out fairly frequently and I played it. Then I backed for the big box and the Fiends and Familiars expansion. And Fiends and Familiars was just kind of more stuff for Minions and Monsters, but also kind of a bunch of unneeded faff. And then the big box had no good storage solution inside of it. And the way everything went into that box was a nightmare, to the point where I ended up just getting rid of the game because I didn't want to deal with it. And I even put a third-party insert in there, and that didn't help at all. That was a game that very much felt like this one expansion made me give up on the game entirely.
Wow. I haven't had that problem where it makes me go, oh yeah, I don't ever want to touch this again. Because more often than not, my expansions make me love the game more.
Well, and with Role Player, that's the way I expected it to go.
Right,
certainly.
Right. Oh, yeah, I'm sure. When it's a game you like, that's why you buy it. I think when it comes to an expansion that messes up a game, just get rid of the expansion.
And I've done that. Atlantis Rising's Monstrosities, I mentioned that, as well as the Kraken expansion for Dead Men Tell No Tales. It's a fine expansion. Mm-hmm. Dead Men has such a clean arc of play that Kraken just clogs it up, and I got rid of that, and I'm happy to play Dead Men.
Right.
The other thought in this is one of the reasons I don't like when there's a constant flow of expansions is power creep or poor play testing. And my go-to on this is Smash Up, where those expansions started out interesting and small with the exception of Cthulhu, which was way overpowered and is still way overpowered. It got to a point where by the 12th expansion for that game, there's just too many combinations. There's no way that you're going to be able to test them all. And there are certain factions that are just too powerful, or they give too much stuff, or there are factions that just flat out don't work, and it just causes everything to clutch up, and it's just no fun for that player. I think that's why I try to be more selective with the expansions I buy, especially now, because I've had games in my I must buy everything phase that made me dislike the experience of the game. And that is something that only existed because of expansions.
I can understand that. When it comes to a game like that, yeah, if you have too much, it doesn't work. And how do you continually play test?
Final point for the conversation. Are you okay with an expansion, quote unquote, fixing or finishing a game? A point of context for this is normally, from what I have gathered, is you're looking at about a 30 to 40% adoption rate for an expansion from the original core game audience. And that number holds in its decreasing pattern for more expansions. So if an expansion comes out and it says, hey, here's a new rule set, or here's new bits or whatever, is that something you are okay with an expansion doing? Is that something you want an expansion to do? Or do you think that they should just bite the bullet in second edition and come out to potentially give a better adoption rate because more people might look at a box that says second edition and say, oh, I'm willing to try that because maybe they fixed what I didn't like in the first place, versus I'm going to buy something for a game that I maybe have a lot of issues with and maybe might not be keeping anyway.
See, when you ask that kind of question, the first one that pops up into my head is from Darrington Press, Queen by Midnight. Still love the game. Still, it's a good 7 for me, little chart. But I also know that the game has problems, so hence why it has a 7.
And your rating is significantly higher than my 4.
Oh yeah. I think it's because I knew what they were trying to do, and it's such a pretty game, and there's so many things that make me really, really like that game.
I would happily engage with the second edition of it. If you buy the expansion that's coming out for it,
if this expansion fixes the problems that I had with the first edition, I don't think it needs it. And then what they can do is sit there and be like 6 months, a year down the line, go, hey, here's a big box. It has everything. So sorry. And it has all the characters. Then you will buy the big box where I have it in 2 smaller boxes.
yeah, that's an interesting way to look at it. But we've talked about it at length before. I don't need to go back into my opinions on it.
No.
My game of that ilk is Tapestry. And Tapestry is one of those games that I have such a hard time recommending to people, despite it being one of my all-time favorite games, one of my most played games, but it is very expensive up front. And Queen by Midnight is also very expensive up front.
Yeah.
And there's something, especially because you and I are routinely gone to as, hey, I like this type of game. What should I play? What should I look at? We are recommendation fountains.
Oh, yeah.
It's very hard for me to look at somebody and say, go buy Tapestry, that's $100. Also go buy Arts and Architecture, that's $40, and it's the best of the expansions. It really puts in kind of the rest of the game. And oh, by the way, go buy the $20 Civilization Replacement Pack, which essentially turns it into Tapestry 2.0. Super hard for me to look at somebody and say that. That said, I own everything, and thankfully I got most of it because I worked for the booth at Gen Con, so I didn't have to put in most of that upfront cost. And so for me, it's very easy to say like, hey, come play my copy. That's done and complete and everything's there. But there are certain games like that where it's really difficult. And so I think if a big box or a second edition of Tapestry existed, an essential edition, pick that up instead. That is a much easier recommendation for me. I mentioned Parks earlier. Nightfall might as well be in the box. Ticket to Ride 1910, why that's not in the box, absolutely no idea.
Yeah, any new editions of that game should just be in the box.
This is a really split decision for me because if I think the potential for a game is there, then I am willing to hold out. Expeditions is a perfect example for me. I had a lot of issues with Expeditions base game, but it has a theme I like. It's from the company I very much enjoy.
Yep.
And I had heard from Dusty, wait for the expansion. It will fix all your issues. And that went a long way for me because I really value Dusty's opinion. I got Gears of Corruption in. I played with it. It's very modular and I don't use everything out of it, but it fixes every single issue I have with that game. Every single issue. It is now one of my absolute favorite Stonemaier games because of the expansion. So there are moments where I am 100% okay with continuing to support a game, especially if I feel like the potential is there, versus I don't like the game in the first place. I don't think an expansion, even if it fixes, is going to change my opinion.
That's why I feel about Queen by Midnight. It's also one of those games where I automatically wanted more because of how many princesses there are in fairy tales.
Oh, yeah.
And I could see where they could go with it. And then also I was hoping it was going to be a fix. So I'm hoping I get both of those things.
Yeah.
Just like you did with Arts and Architecture. So fingers crossed. Hey Mark, why do you have that face?
Because I remembered what we're about to talk about.
It's on the why did I play that? And this time it's mine. For the third time that we've tried to record this. Well, I didn't think that you would absolutely hate this game, though we will get to
Surprise.
your absolutely atrocious slaughtering of this game. And everything that you've said about it, absolutely valid, and I completely agree with you. But I still really like this game. I think I enjoy this game more as a solo thing than as a, hey, let's play this. And that would be Paper Dungeons.
You have made me pay for Endless Winter so many times, and I really thought after Explore and Draw, we were cool, and then you hit me with this.
I didn't actually think you were going to hate this one as much as you did.
I do not like this game.
Yeah. I thought that the Explore and Draw based on Isle of Cats was like, oh, well, this is just happens to be another roll and write, and I did not think the vitriol that I have received from you because of this game was going to attack me. So the game came out in 2020. It plays for about, you're looking at a good 30 minutes. The biggest problem that I will state that I have with this game, it's basically a solo game, y'all. In all honesty, there is no reason to play this game with anybody else. There is stuff that happens where there is a little bit of take that, but it's literally just, hey, I got to this thing before you did, so you just can't go for it. And I got a gem, and there's only 6 of them on the board. Essentially what happens is that you are rolling dice and you're using those dice to increase the levels of your adventuring party. The party is your classic D&D party of a warrior, a wizard, a priest, and a rogue. Each class has a special ability that they gain when they're at level 3. You are purchasing magic items, you are purchasing health potions, and you're running through this dungeon and you're slaughtering monsters and trying to get to mid-level bosses and then eventually to the end boss to hopefully have your squad be high enough level to be able to destroy all of them. I enjoy the game. I'm gonna let Mark slaughter this game. So go ahead and put me on mute because I'm probably gonna giggle.
Scott's not wrong. I'm going to go after this one. As much as I dislike Explore and Draw, a lot of that experience is because I didn't particularly care for the theme, and it simply did not operate well within the way that my brain functions. We talked about that in that Why Did I Play This? This one is a mess. The player sheet is vastly overcomplicated. The dice make little sense because the way the symbology is on the dice is clear enough, but then it has these numbers which ultimately mean nothing because you're supposed to record them in what has to be one of the worst turn trackers I've ever dealt with in a game. But because numbers repeat on each die, it's not helpful. So if I write 662, that might be a white 6 and a black 6. That's just, why would you do that? That makes no sense to me. The player area itself of the map that you're exploring is incredibly busy. And for the size of the sheet, it is not big enough. And you have the issue of the way everything is faded on there, I found to be harder to parse, especially when you actually have to go through and you add in the walls and everything during setup. Neat way to do that, but it just gives you this weird, like, what am I actually dealing with on the board? It can create some visual confusion. The fact you do not have just automatic movement absolutely infuriates me in this game. There is an argument that you never actually have to move through the dungeon to win the game, because if the opponent doesn't make it to the bosses and you're able to power all your stuff up off of your dice, you literally don't have to engage with this part of the board, which is super frustrating to me. The class leveling system is fine enough and it makes sense, but the visual of trying to figure out what class has its particular, like, both colors of dice ability unlocked is not clear, especially in a first play. When you taught me Dice Forge, that was a really phenomenal experience, partially because of how many games we have played. And so I was able to sit there and be like, this does this, and this does this, right? And you said, yes, here's the 2 things you don't know, let's play. You look at the sheet of Paper Dungeons and there's so much stuff, and there's so much stuff that is repeated but poorly laid out that it is just infuriating to deal with. It felt long, and I just...
Now, do you think that, again, I still like the game. I bought its expansion. Do you think that if the pad was bigger and, like, the dice that you said, like if one was 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, would that fix part of the problem? Part of the problem. I know there's still a lot of problems.
I mean, it makes the turn tracker better, but it's still not great.
Correct.
Because one of the other things that's really frustrating in the game is you never feel like you have enough time to do everything you need.
Yeah, because you have 3 turns before you have to fight the first boss. You have 3 more turns to fight the second boss. And then you only have 2 to get to that third.
And one of the things that has me so up in arms about this game is that, to me, it has so much potential. Because when you were explaining the game to me and you said, here's the story of how things come out of, here are these bosses, and we're going to string together a story and we're going to deal with it. It's like, okay, I appreciate this. That has no impact on the game whatsoever.
Yeah, it was very interesting because, you pick a map at random that has basically a Mad Libs style thing where you find this monster and it gives you the letter, and then you look at it, you're like, oh, we are fighting the Minotaur of Zendathu. I don't remember what the heck think it was. And then then you continue on the story and you read the story. It's like, and because of the Lich of Yarbalar, and eventually you find out that these two creatures were all under the control of Jambula the dragon. Hopefully I haven't offended anybody with that. I haven't actually said real words. But anyway, yeah, great idea.
Setup.
Such a neat setup. And then, yeah, no, I agree.
The final thing that grinds my gears on this is, for as complex as the sheet is, the game is not equivalently complex. If I'm sitting there and playing Twilight Inscription, I have 4 gigantic boards in front of me, and they all function relatively the same. Once you played the game a couple times, it all makes sense. But it has the scope and feel that I need all these boards. I need all these systems. I need all this stuff. When I'm looking at this player sheet, yet again, you don't need the gem track. You don't need all these individual things for all the magic items. In fact, there's 2 sets of magic items for every dice face, and you only get to roll the dice 8 times. There's so much that you are never going to interact with. It doesn't feel like the complexity of what is on display matches the complexity of the game, and it doesn't feel like it's worth it.
I get it. And I don't know why I still like it, but I still like it. So
it's Endless Winter for us.
It really is.
I can't explain why I like Endless Winter, but I do.
I definitely concede to the fact that that is a solo game.
Now, as a final point of comparison, I would give this game probably a 2.
Right.
Especially after having to parse through it and do this multiple times and looking at it and thinking about it. I ultimately give Explore and Drop 5. Mm-hmm. I had a struggle with that game because of the way my brain interacts with it. If you said, hey, we're going to play Explore and Draw again, even with all the issues that I have, I would play it again. Please do not make me play this one again.
Good. As long as Endless Winter stays away. Hey, it's time for Table Shelf and Trade, which so much better than why did I play this? Because both of us have a fantastic list that we both really, really enjoy. Mm-hmm. I'm going to go ahead and start this one because I did something a little bit different this time. I actually have all my games between the Table Shelf and Trade are Tim Fowers games.
Interesting.
I love Tim Fowers. I have played a multitude of his games. Most of them are absolute hits for me. Hardback, paperback, love them. I will talk about at least one version of it.
I'm still amazed that Illiterati is not his game.
Right? You would think that was his, but yeah, no. Speaking of a game I want to have an expansion for, boom.
Yeah.
If y'all heard this, make it happen. I'm just going to name the 3 games since they're all Tim Fowers games. We're not going to be surprised. Paperback Adventures, Burgle Brothers, the first one, and then Walkstar. Paperback Adventures takes the game of Paperback and turns it into a solo word building game where you are playing against the deck and playing against the storyline, depending on which book you are working on. I have bought the Damsel storyline because if you've played Paperback and Hardback, you will see the covers of the books that were created by the lead character that was done for this game. And
her name is Paige Turner.
Yeah,
right?
It's Paige Turner.
Perfect.
That's the author of all these books. And so Damsel is the...
I want you to know this has that very strong, like, Page Master vibe to me.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
like classic. Movie. Damsel is the high fantasy book. It's your D&D-esque style book. You're fighting against those type of monsters, and you are building words and scoring points and trying to do damage to the bad guy, and depending on what happens, they might do damage to you. I've struggled with it a little bit, but of course I'm still learning it, so I'm still playing with it. It's a total shelf for me because it is the things that I like about hardback and paperback, because the difference is when you buy cards, you replace letters. It doesn't go into the deck as a deck builder, it replaces. So you still only have, I believe it's 10 letters or 12 letters that's in your deck. You still continue with only those 10 or 12 letters. So you have to sit to be like, okay, how many words can I come up with this that gives me more points so I can get better letters and still score more points or do more abilities? And it's neat to make my brain work that way because I love word puzzles. So, like, of course, paperback and hardback were very much my favorites. This is starting to become that solo, almost honestly, my version of Final Girl, because they are creating more books. One of them is a space book. I do not remember the name of that. And there's also a high seas one.
Oh, nice.
So hitting those genres of book styles, because of course, if you've played, I believe it was in hardback, where you would get, actually no, both of them had a certain genre of books. They would work off of each other. So now you're just working in the genre of book, and that's how the game works. And then you can also mix and match like you do in Final Girl.
Nice.
That I could sit there and be like, oh, I'm going to to take the robot from the space game and the dragon from Damsel, and I can throw those in together and have this crazy fun story. And so I'm really digging it. Paperback Adventures is a solo game.
Oh, nice. So it really is Final Girl.
It really is my version of Final Girl.
Cool, yeah.
So yeah, I think that's the other reason why I like it so much, because it's, oh my god, I actually bought another solo game that is solo only, not, oh hey, look, I found a game that's multiplayer that happens to have a solo mode.
Nice.
So you're rubbing off on me, you jerk.
I am very proud of it. Okay, so let's keep the love going. And admittedly, I am more positive just kind of across the board with my stuff here.
Yeah.
So now is one of my absolute favorite games. You had a riot with this thing, and it is the only game in the hidden movement genre that I like.
Oh.
One of the problems I have with hidden movement is the games normally take 2 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
They're just frankly too long. Fury of Dracula, a lot of fun, too long. Spectre Ops, interesting idea, fun to play at a certain player count, way too long. Letters from Whitechapel, way too long. Escape from the Aliens in Outer Space, though, is 30 to 45 minutes of pure razor wire paranoia, and it is just glorious.
That game is total paranoia in a box.
I may have mentioned it in other episodes. I'm not going to go into the full details, but I have had somebody say, I do not ever want to play this game again because of the way it makes me feel, because I am so nervous. I understand that.
Yep.
Off of that, if you do not like that feeling, this isn't even a trade. This is a stay as far away from it as you can. But for me, who I love high theme, and I love space, and I love horror, and I love Alien, this is glorious because each player is going to be assigned to either the alien team or the human team. And it has that social deduction aspect of nobody knows who each other are. So you and I could both be aliens, but we don't know that. It is incumbent upon us to watch the movements of the other players and see what are they trying to do, where did they start. But there's so many little tweaks and slight asymmetries that you can really string that along for a long time. And what's interesting is the aliens win if they get any of the humans. And that's great. And if an alien gets a human, that human is now on the alien team. So they have lost as a human, but they can still win as an alien. Unless they get jumped by one of their teammates, which I have done in the past. Sorry, Courtney. Humans win independently. So long as a human gets out, they don't care about the rest of the team. They just got to get out. This has one of my all-time favorite moments of my wife, Natalie, lied perfectly through this game. The way the cards were coming up, she had to lie about where she was. And she did it so convincingly that when the one time she had to tell the truth came up, I threw that away as a lie. And I was very confident as to where she was standing. I very aggressively said, I attack at this space, and I missed. And she walked out of an escape pod on the clear opposite side of the board. It was amazing. If you like horror, if you like tension, if you like quick, snappy games, and you are willing to put up with that feeling of dread, phenomenal game.
The game that I got to play with you guys, me and Natalie were the humans again. I literally remember circling 6 spots until I was like, I'm making a beeline for it, and happened to get to the pod that was, and it was unlocked. And I got out. I was the first one out, and I went, those were the worst 10 minutes of my life. And I absolutely loved it.
Yeah.
And then I'm just sitting there hoping that whoever the other human was, that they would be fine. And then you jumped Courtney. And I went, well, I know who the other human is. I was like hoping and praying for Natalie. And I think Natalie got out as well. But it was very close for her as well. Your game for me is a total table. I don't need to buy it. You own it. It's not a thing I would purchase, but boy.
Yeah, it's straight up, it's a shelf for me. I love it because it is a great production. It made me look at Osprey Games and be like, cool, what are you doing? I'm willing to look at you. And because there are so many maps in the game, there's a lot of variety based on player count, how tight you want to make the map, whatever. And there's just ways to create more maps. So the game is essentially infinitely replayable and very well scaled based on player count. Absolute shelf for me.
When you sit there and you look at the box, so they're sitting there behind the astronaut, but depending on how the box sits, the alien completely disappears. And then there's the scales that are on the side of the box.
That spot UV is
That
really well done.
spot UV is done so well, and it's just like, you can tell from the box what you're getting ready to get into.
Yeah, you really can.
And for a hidden movement game that everybody is hidden, that's what's so crazy, because usually those hidden movement games, one person's hiding. literally that game, everyone's hiding.
Yep.
And everybody's trying to figure out who's what, who's who, and gosh bless, that's a great game. Back to me, I'm bringing out Burgle Brothers. You find the team and got to make it through 3 levels, trying to steal from 3 different safes and finding all the staircases and avoiding all the guards and working on the team. And it's such a hard game because that guard is going to move every single turn, and you know where the guard is going. Can you sit there and pick and choose when you want to cause the alarm and have them go in a totally different direction? I love it. It's another one of those games where I'm just like, okay, I'm currently in the bathroom. I've got 3 hidden tiles to wait here for. Yeah, it's a complete table for me because of the 2 iterations that are out. I know the third one is just finished its Kickstarter at the time of now that we're recording. The first version is personally far superior to the second one.
Well, it doesn't have the production issues the second one had.
Yeah, I was looking at my Burgle Brothers today going, man, I need to pull that out. I've had it on my phone and played and enjoyed it. And yeah, I don't think you need the 3D model that they have.
Oh, the
it's
big tower thing.
The big tower thing. I mean, that's fun to be like, look at this thing I have. Honestly, I think it just ends up being kind of in the road. Yeah, I totally dig. It's real slick on how it works. So yeah, it's definitely a table. It is on my shelf, but if it wasn't on my shelf,
you wouldn't be missing it.
Yeah, I wouldn't be missing it, but it was definitely one of those things of, oh good, I like that game.
Nice.
What's your next one?
My next game is one of incredibly few, one of 3 games in my collection that I have gotten rid of, gotten back, and love it more now. That is Black Angel. I'm not going to go into the full breakdown of how it works. I talked about that in episode 4 in the What's Been on the Table segment, so if you want, go back, check that out. This game is so smooth and so interesting because it is a sci-fi reimplementation of a game called Trois, which was a medieval themed dice placement, worker placement game that when I played this the first time, I thought all the little fun, weird edges of Trois are gone, and I feel like the game is lacking for it. Because I thought, okay, I like Trois more. I went back, I played Trois again. I'm like, oh no, Black Angel really is the superior version of this. You add in the gorgeous artwork by Ian O'Toole. It's this high sci-fi neon pinks and purples and blue. It's gorgeous. It also has that pretty wonderful little toy factor because the dice are great and the little robot workers are great, and then you put them in these tiny little spaceships and you fly them around on the outside board. It's just fun to interact with as well. It is a strict mid-weight Euro game. You are doing a lot and there's a lot going on, but one of the most interesting parts of the game is you are going to have a dice pool that you're rolling, and with the exception of potentially 1 die, your opponent is able to take your dice away from you and use them. And so there's this really interesting balance of, okay, well, do I want to use my own dice, or do I want to short Scott that really strong 3-action die over there? I have to pay him for it, but that means that I get to use it and he doesn't. So there's some really neat ideas there, because as you're going through all this, the sideboard where the Black Angel itself is flying through space, you're trying to get through to this planet called Spess. I called that name super dumb in episode 4. I will say it again, it's super dumb in here in episode 7. There's this razor edge that you need to ride on, because if the Black Angel makes it to Spess, everybody gets to score for all these extra categories. So if I'm sitting here and I realize, ooh, Scott, you're ahead of me in all these categories, it is beneficial to me to blow up the Black Angel, and you don't get all that bonus scoring.
Rude.
And so it is such an interesting game. For me, it is absolutely a shelf. I have so much fun with this game, multiplayer. It is one of my absolute favorite solo games. Phenomenal game. Really love this one.
That sounds very interesting. So my last game on my little Tim Fowers series is Walkstar. Walkstar is a cooperative real-time game where players take on different roles to help a Chinese restaurant grow. You get different clientele, there are different dishes, different ingredients are added into the play, all while you have a 20-second sand timer going. And so you are just going as fast as you can. The idea is that if you don't complete the dish in time, they eat for free, and that is horrible. Each order has to have a combination of ingredients. The board has levels of 10 for stuff to be prepared for the kitchen. You have to spend dice in a certain order. You pool your money to invest in the shop so that it has easier time and you can upgrade and get more patrons in, and the patrons that come in are better. It's a 1 to 4 game. It plays for 60 minutes. And if you're playing the game in 2-minute segments, that's a lot.
That's a real long time. It's like a 2-3 hour game.
Yeah, and it felt that way. It's like a medium light. It's not like a huge complexity. I just didn't like it. We never did well with it. I prefer now boarding, which is just as difficult, but had more fun with it. This was a big miss. Loved the artwork. All the artwork of all the Tim Fowers games, of course, they're all the same. I think they're hysterical. It just brings the whimsy of the game, so that's why I try all of them. But I was just like, ew. We were like, oh, well, maybe this is the problem. Okay, we're not in the right headspace. We're trying this at 12:30 at night. So dumb to be playing this type of game. And so then, like, we had that be the first game that we played of the evening. We all went,
No, it's just not that good.
no, it's just not that good.
That's a bummer.
It really is, especially since there's so many things that I love from Fowers games. So yeah, it's a total trade for me.
So my final game is Planet Unknown. And this one's really interesting for me because this was involved in our original set of recordings. When we had to throw this away for quality issues, we improved our sound setup, all the things. But we actually used this as a why did I play this for me? And Planet Unknown has all the hallmarks of a game that I should not enjoy. It's big and it's polyomino and it's kind of take thatty because you can mess around with the way the Lazy Susan turns. It has a lot of fiddliness with that Lazy Susan for setup and teardown. It doesn't have a freaking lid for the Lazy Susan, which means that if you try and store it on its side the way I like to store my games, all the tiles fall out. There's just a whole bunch of things that I could have real serious issues with. There's a reason we used it for why did I play that. But then I sat there and I got the opportunity to try it on Board Game Arena without having to deal with all the physical nonsense of it. And I fell in love with the game because there's strong asymmetry within it. There's so many different planets and corporations. The mix of them gives you that really great, just based on the way setup comes out, you're going to have a different interaction. The way the polyominoes work is ingenious because you have the ability to place a polyomino next to any other polyomino. It doesn't matter. You are trying to build contiguous groups of them based on getting to use special powers that each of the terrain types has. And then based on certain endgame scoring conditions, you can do some extra stuff. There's some competition with neighbors on either side. And it's all simultaneous play. So while we are doing stuff on our board, whoever the lead player, they get to set the Lazy Susan to wherever it is. And then everybody picks one of the two tiles that's in front of them. Once everybody has said they're good, then you move on. It plays quick. The rules are surprisingly easy to teach for how much is going on in the game. And it's just pretty. There is so much positive to this game. For the other games in the segment, Escape from the Aliens Outer Space doesn't have an expansion, doesn't need an expansion. It has a map generator. It has all the things. We talked about that. Black Angel doesn't have an expansion, doesn't need an expansion. You could make the argument because of Twa and Selenia, the two games that are directly involved in the creation of Black Angel, that you could consider those as expansions, but that's kind of a weird argument. Planet Unknown does have an expansion coming, and I am stoked for it, not the least of which because they are actually giving you a lid for the Lazy Susan, and man, they have been testing that thing nonstop. I am very excited for what it's going to do for this box. More asymmetry, very cool stuff, very excited about this. This is a weird one for me though, because the base box as it is, it's expensive, it's large, it's all the things. I would probably call it a table because of the fiddliness and all the things. With the expansion coming, my guess is I'm going to upgrade it into a shelf because of the improved storage, because of the extra asymmetry, because of all the things that it appears to be putting in. That said, I managed to track down a copy of it on sale, and it's still kind of hard to find, but I have all the stuff coming for it. For me, it is a shelf. For the average person, I think it is a table. And then depending on your tolerance for all the fiddliness and all the other stuff, that's where it comes into, is it a shelf or a table?
Yeah, I've absolutely loved this game. Knowing that it was polyomino and with the way my brain likes to brain, I knew it was completely going to scream, hey, this is a game that Scott's going to like. And Scott liked it. Scott liked it a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think I lost, but not by much.
Yeah, not by too terribly much. And it's one that I actually routinely think about, like, man, I need to play that more. I need to put it on the table more. Heading into our final segment, this is Visions of the Future. It's our rotating segment where we get to talk about games that we're excited to play. Maybe it's stuff that we have in our collection, just haven't tabled yet. Maybe it's stuff that we have coming on crowdfunding. Maybe it's something that's been announced and it's not coming out for 2 more years, but we just want to talk about it now. Scott, Go ahead, kick us off.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, both of mine are stuff that at the time of this recording have finished their Kickstarters and have finished their funding. In fact, the one has, now it has hit my house, and that is Dungeon Cart from the gang at Brotherwise. Basically think of the monsters that you have seen in the game of Boss Monster, but give them a go-kart like you're playing Mario Kart. There is lots of fun little fiddly bits to go around, and you can create your own tracks. I went all in with this one because it was going to have the Void and the Ice World and its fun characters, and your main board that you use to do your gears is made out of cardboard, but your actual cars are done out of those fantastic plastic standees. And I don't have a big enough table at my house because honestly, if I did, I would play this by myself and just be like, this is what this guy's going to do, and this is what this guy's going to do, and this is what this guy's going to do, and just have my own little Grand Prix by myself, because that big of a nerd that I would do that, but it needs to sit on this table because it has enough table space.
Yeah, you brought it over, and we haven't had the opportunity to try it yet. I'm excited to. Really interesting production. Big old box.
Big old box.
Big old box.
She healthy.
I'm very interested to see the difference in that versus something like Heat or Formula D, kind of the racing games that we normally enjoy and love.
I have Formula D. I don't have Heat. I don't have Downforce. I don't have any of those. So this is my new version of a racing game. I'm just going to call it out. I don't think it's going to sing to you like it sung to me.
Sure.
I think you will enjoy it, but not on the same level.
Okay.
Personally, just how I know you, there's going to be lots of parts of it that you are absolutely going to love. And then there's going to be parts where you're like, yeah. And that's how I feel about it when it comes to your style of gameplay. The more that I've read the books.
Mine, I have one that is in my collection and one that is crowdfunding and should be delivering hopefully soon. So the one game that is in my collection right now, I am very excited about because it's a game right game, which means it was inexpensive. It is great production. It's in a stupid tin, and it is a really weird design team. It is Phil Walker Harding, one of my absolute favorites, and Eric Lang. It is an area control game called Wrath of Fire Mountain, and you are Neanderthals on this shifting board because you are essentially worshipping this volcano, and once enough worshippers are in the volcano, you actually like shift the map, and so you change the area control regions. And what's interesting is anytime somebody scores in a region, they get the points, and then they pull all their pieces off, which means that anybody that didn't score is now in the lead in that area for the next set of scoring. It looks really interesting. It is such a weirdly matched design team. It supposedly plays very quickly. It has some really great chunky game right components. I am most likely going to force you to play it for a why did I play this? But it's one that I think due to the speed and how you're able to fluctuate and change the board and make yourself asymmetrical, and you can unlock special dinosaurs and all kinds of stuff, I think there is a chance you will like it.
I mean, dinosaurs will help it.
I don't think it's going to be the same response you had to another area majority game, which we're going to be talking about in the future, but I think there's a chance because Phil Walker Harding is so great at streamlined, smooth rules, interesting ideas, and then you match in Eric Lang. It's just a crazy combination. I'm very interested to see how this goes.
Okay, that sounds interesting. The game that I am chomping at the bit is River Valley Glassworks.
So excited.
So excited. All Play makes incredible games. I like all of them independently in some sort of fashion. Not all of them I like well enough that I'm going to own them, but River Valley Glassworks, of course I went for the deluxe edition. Just looks so cool. Has little glass pieces. Has the tiles that you push down the river so that everything slides. You pick up pieces to help complete your sets, but that means pieces that you have might have to put them in the river, which means then your opponents are going to be able to grab, and it's going to be able to help them. It just looks so cool, and I really can't wait to see if it works as well as it looks in photos and videos.
Have you gotten to play some Board Game Arena yet?
I have not.
I got obsessed with this when it launched on Board Game Arena around the time of its crowdfunding earlier this year. I played it endlessly to the point where between Penny Black and River Valley. Azul's out of my collection entirely.
Whoa. Wow.
Yeah. River Valley does that all play thing of being lightweight, very easy to understand, and a small but deep decision space for what you're looking for.
Wow.
When you're taking the glass, you have to place a glass on the river, which means that is now available to your opponent.
Right.
So you're making a space better.
Right.
And now you're taking the pieces from either side of it, and you can only hold 7 of the 8 types of pieces. So if you end up taking that extra 8th piece, now you're losing points. And you can only hold so many of each different glass type. So if you go over, again, you're losing points. And for the 2 highest furthest left stacks, you are going to score the most points. However, you are able to score more points if you stretch your rows out because there's higher scoring for the longer each row is. There's so many little decisions. I got to see a physical copy at Gen Con. They had a display of it on a table in a random hallway, I think. And it looks beautiful. I am so excited. It is one of my favorite games already, and I haven't even played it physically yet.
Yeah, it looks really, really nice.
You are going to absolutely love it once you play it.
Sounds good.
So my other one is a game that honestly I somehow missed picking up in regular edition. And then they announced the big fancy edition and it actually wasn't terribly priced. And so I went in for the high roller edition of Ready, Set, Bet. Horse racing games have not always been the most perfect for me. Honestly, my favorite one is Camel Up, and frankly, that's not a racing game. That's a betting game.
That is a betting game.
You are essentially pitching a live horse race where, honestly, I don't even want to play the game. I want to be the racetrack announcer. And everybody else is going to be placing bets. And basically, it's just a horse race. And if we do not have an overly fancy Kentucky Derby style hat party while playing this at least once, I will be deeply offended that my friends clearly don't care about me enough to want to wear giant hats. So the base game is fairly small board. There's the poker chips. There's all the things you're doing. The high roller edition is a 3.5 foot long playmat because you have the actual horse racing area and then the betting table makes it look like it is a casino table in Vegas. And it is really chunky poker chips and big silly horses and casino dice. Very excited for this one. Its time frame keeps going all over the place. It was supposed to be March delivery and then it was October and now it's January. I don't know. It'll show up eventually. Once we have enough people for it, that's going to be one of those party games that is in the selection with Captain Sonar and Blood on the Clock Tower, that type of stuff.
Oh yeah, that'll be really nice. And I guess I get to go make a really big silly hat.
Thank you so much for listening to us. If you would like to get in touch with Scott and myself or any of the other theater geeks in relation to Board All the Time, you can hit us up at boardallthetimegaming@gmail.com. You can visit us on our website, boardallthetime.com, where we will have a newsletter sign up as well as a feedback form. You can also join us on our Discord. The server link is in the episode notes. And finally, you can find us on Facebook under Board All the Time.
At this time, we'd like to thank our sponsors. Do you like shiny math rocks? I like shiny math rocks. Go to Robin's Nerd Supplies and use the code TheaterGeeks and receive 10% off your order. Links to the website is in our episode notes. Also, we'd like to thank EcoL Press, a local printing company here in the South Bend area, happens to be a union shop, and they do everything for your gaming printing needs. And what's so nice is that they're environmentally friendly. You will also be able to check them out in our episode notes.
And with all that out of the way, Scott, bored of you.
You know what? I'm bored of this episode.
Same. Let's go play some games.
Let's do it.